Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we will be revisiting an episode that we did years ago that simply,
kind of a lost episode.
in a way, it just didn't age well. And the reason for that was we had issues with the audio the last time. And we've patched things up. We've figured out what was been going on since that time. We're using a completely different service to record. We're actually recording through Discord, and we've got different gear and all that stuff. So it's going to be a lot more adequate of a recording for each and every one of you. So we hope to make this a little bit better. But we are talking about a show that you may or may not have watched on, I believe, UPN 9 or Fox. It was on one of those two. It might have, I think it was on Fox. Yep, Fox.
It was on Fox originally, and then there was one season on the WB.
Ah, okay, that's what it was.
Also now known as the CW, I believe.
Yes, that rings a bell. Anyway, so this particular show was a lot of fun. It was a nice stop motion show. It was just on the it was like it started at the late 90s, like 99 exactly, and it was just a fun time. Like, it was still the wild west of animation and like weird and like just a bit of an earlier time for like animated adult sitcoms.
Mm-hmm.
And you also had a lot of really great powerhouse talents on there.
Yeah.
Just overall, a great freaking show. And you could still watch it on Hulu.
And YouTube for free.
And yes, and YouTube. So there's a bunch of really cool...
uploaded like the whole fucking series to YouTube, so...
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, before we get started, let me just run our usual nonsense. What we do for you. We are Why Does This Exist? We're a podcast that talks about the weirdest things in pop culture. You can do a number of things to support us. One, you could simply find the show on whatever podcast service that you use to listen to your podcasts, and you can just simply listen to it. Give us a nice rating if you can, so that it bumps us up, and then other people can listen to it so that we don't have to tell you, both of you listening. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which also has the episodes and everything, and you can interact with that. We really just prefer that you subscribe to the channel. You don't have to hit the stupid bell notification. Nobody cares about that. Nobody even does it anymore. We just need people to just hit the stupid button that says subscribe, and then you could just ignore all of our videos. We just want the subs so that we can get monetization, or at least get to 50. Would that be too much to ask? We need 5 people. By, I don't care, Sunday. Let's say that. No, this will probably go up on Sunday. Next Sunday. Whatever Sunday from the time that you listen to this show, that's the Sunday that we'd like to have 50 subs. And if we have 50, then we want 100. And so on. Until we have 10 billion. I don't even think there's 10 billion people on the earth. But by then, there'll probably be 20 billion. And we'll both be dead. But the show will live on. You can also support us in a number of ways, additional ways, by giving us money. We have social media stuff, I think, but we don't really use it. And my Facebook got deactivated by the douchebags at customer service thanks to some Vietnamese person hacking me.
Whoa.
That's what happened. I got hacked by a Vietnamese person. The
Words but a
specific
wise.
location was Vietnam.
Jeez.
I
Back to
didn't.
Nam.
Yeah, I don't live in Vietnam. I
Just
have
like
never
a
been to
bygone.
Vietnam. So explain that to me. Anyway, stupid Facebook's customer service decided I was the liar and deactivated the account. And you can't get in touch with them because they have the worst customer support on earth. So, Mark Zuckerberg, you can suck me.
You could Zuckerberg it.
Sure. Anyway, you could just give us money instead. Buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/whydoesthisexist. And then you don't have to bother with us anymore. Just give us money that one time and we're good. Or you could just support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. We have articles and stuff for you to read. And we'll let you into the Discord server so that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. You can hang out, you can see the schedule, you could even be on the show. And on that show, you could tell us that we suck. And we have to sit there and take it. Just like the people in Vietnam who are taking it from their superiors, probably severe beatings as they hack helpless accounts everywhere. Anyway, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Explain what the PJs is to the good people.
Well, if
who have now dropped off to be one person listening.
If they've listened to the first episode or the first episode of this,
the person who dropped off was
original,
Vietnamese.
The original, God, the original PJs episode. Basically, we talked about how it was a stop motion sitcom, animated sitcom that was created by Eddie Murphy, who was also the voice of the main character Thorogood. Thurgood Stubbs, who's the super of a building it's like the projects, and that's why it's called the PJs, because it's about basically all the people that live in this particular housing project, and it's obviously a very poor, low income area. Everyone's kind of like poor. It's supposed to be, I believe it's supposed to be New York City, but I don't know if it's ever explicitly mentioned if it is or not.
I'm not sure. I rewatched a few a few episodes. I didn't go into I didn't have enough time to watch all 3 seasons.
Yeah,
I don't
think it's ever explicitly mentioned what city it is, but it's kind of supposed to be like a pastiche of like New York City and other like urban like inner city areas, kind of
right.
Low income housing projects.
Right, because it's not even necessarily implied as to where it is,
no,
which I think is a strength to the episode. Like,
yeah, well,
because to the show, because it can be anywhere where they have the projects.
Yeah,
like, and I'm sure a lot of I've never lived in the projects. My dad has. I can, like, I imagine, and obviously, I had a number of friends in high school and college, and even now, who like grew up in the projects, and they've moved on up, but
to the east side.
Yeah, I mean, some people still do live in the projects that I know.
Yeah,
but I'm sure this show would really resonate with them, because I'm sure a lot of these occurrences are things that you would see in the projects.
Yes,
I mean, of course, a little bit more exaggerated.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's like certain things, like the buildings are never up to code. The homeless, like you have like a big homeless issue, or like crackheads and things like that. I'm sure you run into a bunch of this stuff.
For those who don't know what the projects are public housing apartment buildings that are oftentimes like very, like you said, shitty in like terms of like barely being up to code. They're usually oftentimes dirty, unfortunately, and it's just like poor areas, and unfortunately also often full of crime, because lower income areas tend to be, just because people that are of lower income tend to turn to crime to survive. So, it basically it's, but like, people that live in the projects often make the best of what they have, I think. And I think this is what
They
that show is
do.
trying to capture, that despite the fact that everybody is like really poor and like, they live in a shitty housing project and it's a high crime area or whatever, they like the neighbors all kind of like try to make the best of it and like, all have like various like things that they all do together. Actually, if and Thurgood, the main character, he's the super of the projects. So, a running gag is that he often like doesn't actually do his job and fix any of the problems. Like he like tries to, but he just doesn't really do it in the end. But the specific episode I was watching, like,
I think that could be said for a lot of supers, though, and I think
yes,
most people assume that supers really don't do anything, which they do a lot, but they usually, well, a lot of them do a lot, and a lot of them are really responsible and do very good jobs. But some people, like the super that I have in my building, absolutely suck.
yes. Well, there are, yeah, right, and I think Thurgood is like not like a super that's like purposely bad. Like he does mean well and he tries, but he just does, it's like he's like, just like he's like a lovable doofus that kind of just can't get anything done. And the
Well,
episode, like,
he's also like frustrated with the way that the system is. So
yes,
he also he also has to like do workarounds for a lot of things, which I think is the case for a lot of supers too. Like like there's an episode that I was watching the other day on season 2 where um his um his his supervisor dies and he didn't know because he's been like when it comes to his annual review, he's been forging them for years because his super's an alcoholic, so he's just been like dropping off his review that he wrote himself that of course gave him a glowing review, and he like walks over with a bottle of alcohol so that he could just sign it, and then he'll drop it off at the depot for him, or and he gets up there to see like to see a medical team walk like carrying his boss out, and he still tries to like forge the signature with his dead hand, and he walks into the he goes into the center, and he drops it and he drops off the review, and the woman behind the counter is like, "Oh, really? You got his signature, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "He's dead, right?" He's like, "I know. He's just signed it last night. It's a damn shame that this was the last thing he did." And she's like, "Well, that's interesting because when they found him, he'd been dead a week." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So like she catches him red-handed, and then he's trying to find a replacement supervisor. So he of course tries to get one of the other people in the building who like can just let him keep doing what he's doing. And and his wife decides that his wife like writes the review because the other guys can't come up with a good idea. So his wife Loretta ends up giving the right, his wife's name is Loretta, I believe she is. Am I wrong? Oh no,
Muriel.
Muriel. I'm so sorry, Muriel. I don't. Oh no, she's
Botch.
the voice actor is Loretta Devine. That's my confusion.
Yeah.
My bad. So ends up. So Muriel ends up going down to the depot with her properly written one, and they give her the job, and she takes it seriously. She puts in for the job. She takes it seriously, and she's writing down all the building violations and all of the things that he needs to do to fix, and she's like cutting all these things down. And then later on, the boiler is going to overheat and they're all going to die because there's a nuclear reactor for some reason. It was built in like the 40s, so they put a nuclear reactor in there, so they think everything's going to explode, and because Thurgood has to like he has to fix it, and he's asking her about all these things because he's trying to like he's like, he's like, why is the hose too short for the water? And she's like, oh, well, it was too long to be up to code, so I had to shorten it. And he was like, he's like, oh, well, that doesn't, well, now this isn't, well, now this isn't going to work. Why'd you put tape on the windows? Because you're supposed to have it, you're supposed to have them, um, you're supposed to have them up to code, and you're supposed to have them replaced with these kinds of things. And he's like, I don't get any funding.
Yeah.
Where am I going to get the money for this? Like, it's better to tape it up than to not have a window at all. Or there's all these other things. And and Muriel ends up learning that it's the way that it is.
Yeah.
And that's why that's why the building is not up to code, because the funding isn't there. And also he has to make all these workarounds to fix the actual problems that have been created because of the neglect.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a lot of the show is actually really like based on like kind of like real things that happen oftentimes in low income areas. Like the one episode that I was watching is Thurgood ends up like wrestling the governor, who was an ex-professional wrestler. So I guess it's kind of like a reference to
Jesse
Ventura. Yeah. And basically the governor wants to come in and like he's like, oh, we're gonna build this huge like sporting arena and it's gonna create all these jobs. So like everybody in the projects is like all happy about it because they think, oh, this is gonna be great, we're gonna have jobs and all that. But what they don't know is that they're gonna literally tear down the projects to build this arena.
Oh, yeah, that stuff happens all the time.
Which literally happens all the time, and they always do this. And it actually reminded me exactly of the what's the friggin' arena in Williamsburg that they built.
You mean Barclays Center?
Yeah, the Barclays Center. I'm like
that's
this
not
is literally the Barclays Center.
Yeah,
well,
that's not in Williamsburg, but it's
right next to Williamsburg.
Yeah, it's like right around the corner.
Yeah, but like it's like that's exactly what they did with the Barclays Center. They just threw it in the middle of this low income area, so to quote unquote create jobs. But meanwhile, they like tore down like half the projects just to do it. And it's like it's exactly what it's like. And so Thurgood ends up like wrestling the governor over this, like to stop it from happening, basically. And they have like a pro wrestling match. It's pretty hilarious.
That is pretty funny. What season is that on?
It's in season 2.
Okay.
And I thought it was also hilarious because we had like literally, when I was watching this, it was a couple weeks ago. It was like literally right after we had talked about like, we at the AEW episode, the problems with AEW episode that we had. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, this is perfect to watch this one right now. It's a wrestling episode.
It feels like something that they would do on Impact like 3 years ago. That exact storyline.
Well, it's hilarious because like Thurgood, like it's implied that he was a former professional wrestler, but he was like in like a black only like indie wrestling promotion, I guess. So it was only like black people. And it's like it's hilarious because he's like trying to explain to like the kids like what like professional wrestling was, because I forget what like the premises of like what like how it starts, but they somehow get like really interested in professional wrestling. And then like Thurgood's trying to like explain the history about how he used to be a wrestler and whatever. And then like that's when like the governor gets like involved and stuff, and it's like he's trying to like kind of like be reformed from his professional and like wrestling like image. Instead of like working out his like muscles, he like works out his brain or something. Like that's his like new slogan. I forget what it's pretty funny.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like a perfect like example of like what actually happens in the projects oftentimes is like, these like people, like these politicians that have like nothing to do, that don't even live near the projects or like have anything to do with the projects, will come and say, oh, we're going to create all these jobs. And like,
well, they also don't want them there.
Yes.
Like the whole agenda behind all of this, like, we're going to build this new arena to like create new jobs bullshit or whatever it is. The whole point is to make the projects is to destroy the projects. The whole purpose is because it's a low income area. So they view it as an eyesore and like crime ridden areas and like such. So.
Right. So instead of actually like just fixing the problems, it's like, oh, let's just fucking destroy it and then sweep it under the rug.
Right. And then the people who are in the projects, it's not like they can just live in that area. They don't give them homes in these nice buildings, and they don't just automatically give them jobs.
No.
They like and even if they could, how many jobs would that, like the amount of jobs at that arena, even if every job in the arena went to someone in the projects, it wouldn't be enough made to compensate for the people who don't have a place to live.
Right.
And also
Well,
they don't have the money to like, now they don't have enough money to stay in the area, so they have to move to like another low
yes.
income area.
And
So
that's
like
that's part
that's
of the episode too. It's like everyone has to be bussed in, like they have to like bust themselves across the city to get to work at this new arena because like the projects, and like this is kind of like how Thurgood, like everyone's like excited for it, but then like Thurgood like uses this as like, hey, like no, like they're gonna tear down our building, like we can't do this. They can't let them do this. This is like where we live, and yeah, it's shitty, and like it's like he's got like this sentimental like attachment to the projects because and everybody does, but they don't realize it. It's like, and they're like, wait a minute, like you're right, like this is our home. Like yeah, it's like it's shitty and fucking like dirty, and like nothing works because like Thurgood can't fix anything, but like it's like our place, and it's gonna get torn down. So that's how they kind of like he gets everybody to band together against it.
right. And also you have a bunch like, but like you said, the other thing about this show that's interesting is that it's like it's not about Thurgood. He's the main character, but it's not about him. It's about the projects itself
Yes.
and the people in it. So I mean, while Thurgood is kind of the glue that's holding the show together as a central character, the episodes are more about how everything affects specific characters
Yeah.
throughout the show.
Yeah. Oh, and a number of episodes focus on Calvin and Juicy, who are the two kids, and they like really like Thurgood. They like
I
look up
think
to him.
I think Juicy is a reference to Biggie Smalls.
Yeah. If Juicy's Biggie, then who's Calvin?
I don't know, because he's in a wheelchair, so I don't think he's Pac.
Yeah. Well, Pac wouldn't have been in New York City anyway.
No, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the characters are kind of like these little unique things, and it's like they're really kind of like based off of people that you would see in the projects. Like you have like Smokey, who's like the crackhead that hangs around and he's homeless, and there's Jimmy Ho, who's like a Korean guy who like is like he like kind of like has immersed himself in like the African American community, and like and he's married to BB, who's like Muriel's sister. So like he like says all these like Ebonics stuff, and like he's just, that's just how he is. But it's like everyone kind of like, this is like the kind of people that you would see. It's like the projects have like such a huge like mixture of different people and characters and stuff, and it's like they really captured that in the characters. You have Garcelle, who's like a Haitian like voodoo priestess, and like it's interesting. You have all these interesting little characters that like really kind of like really have a good like it's like, okay, this is a good like example of like the kind of people you might actually see in the projects.
Yeah.
I like to I know we talked about this on the first episode, but again, that was kind of like the shitty episode because the audio was fucked up. But like, the animation actually for this time period is pretty impressive because, obviously there was a lot of animated sitcoms at this time. The Family Guy started around this time. You had The Simpsons that had been on for like 10 years already. And there was a number of others, but the PJs was unique in that it used like a stop motion animation style, and
Right.
it was kind of like really, I don't want to say it was the first sitcom. It might have been. I don't know if it was or not.
I
Actually,
don't know if it I
it
don't know
was
if it,
definitely not common during that time to use stop motion.
no, you saw some of it on like kid shows, but even then you barely saw stop motion. You don't really
Yeah.
you hardly ever see much of it now, but you saw a lot in the 90s, but
Well,
it had like Stop motion in the 90s was more reserved for kids shows, but
And
also
movies. It was oftentimes more movies than it
yes,
was actual like series.
yes,
And the
but
reason for
often
that,
but often stop motion would have like these phases where it would be like there'd be like a string of stop motion things, and then there'd be nothing, like a lot of peaks and
yeah.
valleys, and they'd be like pretty sharp peaks and valleys. Like one
Well,
moment you'd see a bunch of stop motion, and then for years you wouldn't see anything.
I think a big reason for that is that it's very expensive and time consuming. So
Oh yeah,
every episode of the PJs took over 2 months to produce because of the stop motion.
yeah, I
Uh,
believe that.
it's an incredibly time consuming process, and like when animation is happening, when they're doing like traditional animation, there's a lot of shortcuts that they take to make it like faster, and you have like teams of people that are drawing every frame. So like you say like you know uh however many frames, so like one scene's got like say like 50 frames or something like that. There's probably like 30 people working on it, and they're each drawing a couple of frames, so it takes like like a couple of days worth of work versus like 2 months with stop motion, because you
Right.
literally like you're not drawing frames, you're like you have to move a little bit and then take a picture, move a little bit, take a picture, it like it's very time consuming and incredibly expensive to make the models for it.
I'm sure.
So I think that's a big reason why you don't really see stop motion as much in series. Like obviously for movies it's a different thing, because it's like okay, it's a 2 hour feature film, that's a lot different than an entire season of 14 episodes that are 22 minutes each. uh
Sure.
so and I think that's like, even like you look at like a show like Robot Chicken, which came a little bit after the PJs but was also stop motion. Those episodes were only what, like 10 minutes long. So
Something like that.
yeah, and they were all short little clips. It wasn't like a full like episode of like one thing. Everything was like a short little clip, and then it would go to the next thing. It was almost like a variety show or a sketch comedy show with action figures. Like in
Right.
a
And I
way.
mean, I'm sure now like stop motion and software have evolved to the point where you can it's a lot easier to do stop motion because people may not have to like do every single movement.
Well, I
With
think
a character,
also.
you might be able to do a little bit more just because of software, but it's still going to take a very long time and it's
Well,
still going to be expensive.
I think real stop motion, they still do mostly stop motion. I don't think they really use software if they, because I think that a lot of them kind of like see that as like cheating almost.
Oh, sure.
But I think the camera rigs that they kind of use now are a lot like better and more suited to doing stop motion.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of boutique stuff that's specific for stop motion.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's definitely, I don't know recently what has been like a really big good stop motion like film or TV show. I know Coraline was, but that was a few years ago now. And that was a pretty good movie. And I think Tim
Yeah.
Burton is like a big fan of stop motion. He's done like obviously Nightmare Before Christmas, which was 30 years ago now, but whatever.
I mean, he
Um,
uses a degree of stop motion in a lot of his projects.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah, which
Uh,
I wonder if he's using any more stop motion in the sequel.
yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, are they going to just go to like CGI because it's easier and cheaper?
I hope not. I mean, I could see him opting not to go
I
CGI, but I don't know. It depends.
I've always been a really big fan of stop motion, even in like like live action movies. Like you look at like the Ray Harryhausen stuff from like the 80s, like uh,
Oh, that
uh
stuff still looks great.
yeah, like was it Unleash what is it, friggin' the Titans, what is it,
Oh, Clash of the
Clash
Titans.
of the Titans, and like Jason and the Argonauts, and you look at that and it looks, I personally like it better than CGI. I think it looks more realistic.
Hmm.
Um, Even though it's like way more expensive, obviously.
Oh, because it's a real thing that's being made and moved and
Yes,
manipulated.
yeah. I think that's the problem, is that like there's a big uncanny valley thing with CGI. Like you could really tell right away it's fake, you know,
Yeah.
and practical effects just look better and more real. And I think that's kind of a lost art a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's coming back.
Yes, yeah. I mean, well, you have like people like Christopher Nolan tries to use as many practical effects as he can,
Yeah.
when he does his movies. Like, you look at like like The Dark Knight and stuff, and that was like mostly practical effects. Um, and then even like the hospital blowing up, they actually used like an actual like parking garage that was like slated to be demolitioned, and
Mm.
blew it up and like filmed it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's definitely, it is coming back, and there's been a couple of movies that have really, I think a lot of like more niche filmmakers that are like really like artsy kind of filmmakers. They're the ones that are trying to do more practical effects when it comes to like action movies and stuff, which is great. But it would be interesting to see that like stop motion again used as like for like those impossible shots, you know uh
Yeah.
because like I think we're so oversaturated with CGI films now. Like you watch a film like Avengers or something like that, where like literally the entire thing is shot on green screen. There's almost no practical effects at all. It's all CGI, and it's like we're so oversaturated with that kind of movie now. That's like every other action movie that comes out of Hollywood is just like a big like CGI blue screen film or green
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, it like they all feel cheap.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not just trying to disparage like the people that actually like do the CGI, because I know they work very hard and it's a very labor intensive process. Like, and they're doing a lot of work, and it's I don't blame them. I blame Hollywood itself for like just like running with CGI. Like, I get it for like those impossible shots that you can't do with a practical like effect, but like I think a lot of filmmakers rely too heavily on it for like stuff that could be done practically now.
Right. I
Um,
mean, as a perfect example, just take a look at any Marvel movie.
yes,
Like it's just CGI
yes,
like up the
literally,
wazoo just for the
literally
sake
nothing,
of CGI.
nothing but CGI.
Yeah.
And again, they weren't always like that. You look at like the old, like the first X-Men movie, or like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Like yeah, there was some CGI in those movies, but they tried to do as much like actual like practical special effects as they could. you know but
Right.
they really only use CGI for those very impossible shots that would like be literally like the actor, like if they actually tried it with the actor, they'd probably like die, or a stunt person, like
Right. Like for the most part, you'll really only see practical effects a lot like more consistently used across horror. And that's
yeah,
kind of the way that it's always been,
yeah.
but
But you know what, even some of the big budget horror now, they're starting to like shift more into CGI. Like you
I
look at
was
like,
gonna say that if you look big budget, then they end up doing a lot.
yeah,
Then it tends to like just fall in line with the rest of Hollywood.
yeah, like the like the Nun, and that whole film universe with like oh shit, what is it?
Oh, Insidious.
Yeah. Like, is it Insidious 1 and 2 with like the original was like, it was like those two, it was actually based on a true story of those two, like like one of them was a like it was a husband and wife, and like the husband or the wife was a medium, and they actually like they had like I think investigated like the original Amityville horror house and
Oh,
stuff
you
like
mean the
that.
Warrens? The
Yeah.
Warrens.
Yeah, that those
No,
movies.
that's not the Insidious one. Then that's the
The Conjuring. It's the Conjuring.
yes.
It's the
There you
Conjuring
go.
universe. Yeah. So like those movies use a lot of CGI.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but again, those are like super big budget horror movies, and it's really more of like an action flick than a horror. Like what you or I would consider a horror movie. We're like, when I think of a horror movie, I'm thinking like Halloween or Friday the 13th. Like a slasher
Right.
flick, or
Right.
even like Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, there are still some horror movies that do try to like go back to that, though, like the using kind of like, although they actually, I think, did announce there is another Evil Dead movie coming out, so maybe we'll see some more like some more practical special effects in that one.
Yeah.
um
I mean, that franchise has always been good about it.
yeah. But anyway, back to the PJs. As I was saying, like just the animation style and how much work went into it was incredibly impressive, especially for a network sitcom
Yeah.
where like
Well,
the budget was probably not that high.
I think the budget was probably high enough because it needed Eddie Murphy and because it was an Eddie Murphy creation. I think
Well,
they probably gave more money to it than they would have because of him.
yeah,
But I mean, even the acting is just freaking awesome in this show.
yeah,
Like Eddie Murphy, I forget I like because I don't really see a lot of him, and when you do, he's doing movies that most people are not like. He's doing like family movies that most people are really not interested in
yeah,
these days. I forget how funny he is until I watch something like this. Like almost every scene he cracks me up, and he has like this preset that he goes to whenever his character's annoyed about something in every
mhm,
movie, where it's just like, hey, what you mean, man? But like, and like he does that all the time for Thurgood, and there's something about that specific delivery that cracks me up, and he's always doing it for Thurgood. Um, but just his ability to carry the scene alone, and also everybody else on the show is just so talented. You have Loretta Devine, Kevin Michael Richardson, who he's not on enough, but he's wonderful.
mhm.
Um, but also you have the theme song. The first thing that hits you is the theme song.
Yeah,
George Clinton and
yeah,
composed by Quincy Jones III. How could you possibly like? How could you go wrong? It's the thing that I always remembered about that show was the theme song, and that's when I first pitched the idea of the PJs to you. Like, what was it, like 2 years ago now, or something like that?
a year and a half ago, maybe.
Maybe at least a year and a half ago. I like when I pitched it to you. I'm not sure if you had seen the show or if you forgot about it,
Yeah,
but
I think I
but
had mentioned this on the original podcast. Is that I remember it when it was on, but I never like watched it. Like I might have seen like an episode here or there, but I remember when it was on, I think it was because I don't know what its time slot was, but it came on after something that I did used to watch a lot. Like it might have been like on like Fox like late on Saturday night after like the news or something like that. Cause I used to always when I was growing up, I always watched Fox on Saturday nights because I would watch Cops, America's Most Wanted, and then the 10 o'clock news for some
oh,
reason. So maybe I don't know if it came on after that or like just it came on after something that I always watched on Fox.
you were a weird kid.
I know I watched it. I don't know. I used to like Cops and I used to like America's Most Wanted growing up.
No, I'm not talking about that. You watch the damn news.
Well, that was just what was on after. So like I'd be like falling asleep like just watching and whatever was left on was left on, you know?
Oh, I
So
thought
like
you were like you would look forward to the news and
no,
then
no,
you would go to bed. Like as an
no.
8-year-old, I want to know what like what's going on in politics.
You know, I was just like that was just what came on, you know, while I was awake still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or
Uh
or as an 8-year-old just going, what's the weather going to be like all week?
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they're around, and I'm sure they're weird kids.
Yeah. But yeah, so I do distinctly remember the PJs from that time. It might have been even after SmackDown or something.
I
When
feel like it
SmackDown was
might
on
have
Fox.
been. I feel like
Yeah,
it might have been cuz
because
that's when I remember watching it.
yeah. And yeah, because I would always watch SmackDown and I think SmackDown was on Fridays back then.
In 2000? No,
Or was it
SmackDown was
on
on
Thursday still?
No. SmackDown was on UPN.
Okay, so it might have
I would watch SmackDown on I don't know if there was a replay on UPN
it might have
at
been
10.
syndicated on UPN, the PJs then, because UPN oftentimes got like syndicated sitcoms. Like Seinfeld was on UPN at one point. I'm pretty sure they had The Simpsons at some point. So it might have been, or it might have been on like WB or something at some point that I've seen it.
Either that or I would switch over. Either that or we would switch over to the PJs after SmackDown or before SmackDown. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
or it might have even been during. I remember the show. I always remembered the show from the theme song
Yes.
because this was also a time period where the theme song mattered
Yeah.
because that was what hooked you in from the get go. Was that it had a theme song that told you the entire story. It like this is what the show was about.
Yeah.
This is what it is. Here's all the lyrics that explain the gist of what the show is, and then here's a montage of various episodes that may or may not have even been completed. And
Even if
this
it
is the
wasn't just
show.
like a
And they
montage of
always,
episodes, it would be just like a. It would introduce all the characters and like it kind of like it would catch your attention and like a lot of these sitcoms became like iconic. Like you think about like
oh yeah,
of that time period, like The Simpsons and like Family Guy. Like everybody knows what the Family Guy intro sounds like.
right.
And so like that was just like it was part of the show. Like that was like just like it became like iconic, and the PJs was definitely like I definitely remember the theme song, like hearing the theme song at some point
Right.
in my childhood.
I feel like The Office was like one of the last shows where the theme song mattered.
I think a lot of animated shows still really focus on the theme song, like Bob's Burgers theme song is pretty
Yeah,
iconic.
yeah,
I think a lot of sitcoms now go with the cold open though, and that's why. So you don't
yeah,
really
which is
have that.
probably because of streaming, because most people skip the intro.
Yeah, yeah. But even like stuff that's on network TV, I think they still go with the cold open.
Hmm.
I guess maybe because they're honestly, it's probably because they're limited for time. They want to squeeze another commercial break in.
Probably. I mean, we've had just streaming for the longest time that I really couldn't tell you. I can't remember the last time I watched a network show.
Yeah, I also just stream now. I think most people do. I don't. I
Yeah.
think only boomers are the ones that are still plugged in. that
Probably. I mean,
that
the
haven't
last
got the
time
cord.
that the last time that I probably watched something that on regular network television was probably at my parents' house. So there
I
you
think
go.
the last time I ever watched something on network television was probably like in a hotel room where I didn't have streaming, like so it's like you're just like flipping through channels because like what else are you gonna do while you're sitting there like going to bed,
Yeah, that too. But I mean, before we got onto that, I wanted to I wanted to get back to just talking about just how the talent of Eddie Murphy to like be putting all this stuff together
Yeah,
and
and
to
we've talked
like
about this before how great Eddie Murphy is several times on the podcast. I know for sure. Obviously on the first PJs episode we did, but I know we've mentioned Eddie Murphy numerous times on the podcast. Probably also on the Shrek episode.
yeah.
Because he's just Eddie Murphy is probably I would say he might be the greatest comedian of this generation. Like
Mm,
he's like the George Carlin or the like the Red Fox of this generation. Like
yeah. He's extremely versatile.
yes, and
Just
like everything he does has been pretty much great. I mean, some of the more recent stuff he's done has been kind of like but like you look back at all the stuff he did like in the 80s and the 90s and it was like instant classic stuff.
yeah. And then he has like all of these nuggets in between where he does something amazing, like Dreamgirls or Dolomite is
Yep.
My Name. Dolomite is My Name was incredible.
Well,
I don't know why he doesn't do like projects like that more often.
yeah. I mean, and go back and look at like Harlem Nights, which again, Eddie Murphy
Oh,
starred
such
and
an
directed
underrated
it.
movie.
He starred and directed, and this was
Yeah.
1989, and also Richard Pryor and Red Fox were in it. So it's like
Yeah.
he got all the greats together, and I think that was like really like Richard. That was like the passing of the torch from Richard Pryor to Eddie Murphy, kind of like like
Yeah, well, the
and
interesting thing is Richard Pryor didn't like Eddie Murphy because he was afraid of him. Oh
yeah,
no, was it
I
Richard
heard that.
Pryor or Bill Cosby?
No,
Bill
Bill
Cosby
Cosby didn't like
was
him.
the
I think
one.
Richard
Richard
Pryor
Pryor
did
did
like
like him.
yeah,
Yeah,
because Richard Pryor was
That's
like
right.
Richard Pryor was wild, so he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, that's what it was. No, I think Richard Pryor one of them didn't like I think one of them didn't like Chris Rock, but I'm not sure. Well, Bill Cosby might have not liked Chris Rock either.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah.
but
Which is ironic because Bill Cosby was like the scumbag all along. So you know,
yeah, go figure.
yeah,
But but
he was
yeah, like
America's dad. What the fuck happened? You know?
yeah, I know. Well, dads sin.
Yeah,
Dads are bad. Dads screw their kids up. So
yeah,
America's been screwed up because of that dad.
yeah,
Um anyway, like yeah, that's what it was. It was Bill Cosby did not like Eddie Murphy because he was afraid of him because Bill Cosby was because Eddie Murphy was the up and coming hot guy. But
yeah.
I'm pretty sure I had heard that it was Richard Pryor too in the Comedians in Cars and Getting Coffee episode, but I'm not I can't confirm it.
I don't know. I feel like Richard Pryor like probably liked Eddie Murphy because
But I
I think
heard that I
they were
heard
kind
that
of two peas
people
in the pod.
I heard that the other would leave if he heard that Eddie Murphy was coming.
Well, I mean, he was in Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy, so
I
I mean, how
know.
I couldn't have hated him. That Eddie Murphy directed and started. So you know, it's like
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. There was a rivalry apparently. Like I'm looking this
All
up
right.
now, but apparently quite a few people did it. Like Eddie Murphy idolized Pryor, but Richard Pryor was in fact afraid of him. Like they got like he said they had like a weird relationship
Huh.
because Hollywood was doing like, and this is like a Murphy quote. He was saying that like they did like Hollywood was kind of into that one black guy at a time phase
Yeah.
where they were like, I mean, it were like, no surprise to anybody, but Hollywood is and was very, very racist, just like most of America in the past.
Yeah.
Um, and not to say that that's not still going on, but it's not as harsh as it was.
Well,
Um,
it's an
it's
ongoing
it
it's an
is always going
ongoing
to be an it's always going to
process
be an
of
on
fixing. It's an
yeah it's
ongoing healing.
yeah it's always going to be an ongoing thing. I mean, we've talked about this before, but well, sadly, racism is an industry, and if it stopped making money, then you would see no racism. But
It's an
it's
industry, and
very
it's
it's
partially
easily
human nature.
it's easily exploited
It's
by
definitely
media outlets, so it makes money.
it comes from a. I honestly think it's like ingrained human nature. Not saying that it's again. I'm not like saying it's a good thing that everybody you know, and everybody should obviously try to like recognize it and fight it. But like you know, it comes from a time where you know your tribe was like your people, and that tribe over there was going to kill you and take your shit, so like you had to hate them, you know. And again, I'm not saying that it's right or justifies it, but that's just like it's kind of like something that's like it became ingrained in us, and it's really hard to like get rid of it because of that.
Yeah.
So
No, but
you
it
know,
was well, he had like a weird relationship with Pryor, but I'm also seeing okay, this is like a recap of the Comedians in Cars episode, but he had a weird relationship with Richard Pryor where he's like, his quote is, back when I broke, the town was still doing a one black guy thing at a time. So when I show up, Richard kind of had this feeling like there was this new guy, so Richard felt threatened, which I could see that at the time where where Richard Pryor kind of felt like, oh, it's kind of like in the wrestling business where like in the 80s where like where like the guys on top would work hurt all the time and try to undercut the up and coming guys because they didn't want to lose their spot and the money that came with it. So they were
yeah,
hesitant to pass the torch, which I could see Richard Pryor doing too.
yeah,
Um, but Bill Cosby, on the other hand, Bill Cosby just would tell you he would tell you how to do your job.
yeah,
Like he would end up like telling you, no, don't curse or don't do this or don't do that. Where like he wanted you to do comedy how he does comedy, and he would like belittle the way that you were doing it. Like he wasn't good. He wasn't nice
yeah,
to people.
yeah. Well, he wasn't nice to people. Is
He wasn't nice to
understatement.
people at all. He
Yeah,
wasn't. I mean, like he wasn't nice. He wasn't nice to Eddie Murphy and comedians, but he wasn't nice to people in general. We'll put it that
Exactly.
way.
Yeah.
Um. So, yeah, he had an odd relationship with Richard Pryor. Bill Cosby is, well, it is what that is,
Yeah.
which is a damn shame. But still, back to the talents of Eddie Murphy. I mean, interestingly on the show, if he didn't want to voice Thurgood, or if he wasn't able to for one reason or another, they did have a guy, Phil Morris, who was like a sound-alike that came in.
Well, Phil
And
Morris also was famous for being Jackie Childs in Seinfeld.
yes, so
So
he would come in and he would do the voice.
yeah, which
And
I can see
sometimes he
because
would, yeah,
you listen to Jackie Childs, he does sound a lot like Eddie Murphy.
yeah.
So that does work out.
Yeah, but so that guy is kind of the unsung hero of the show because he was on like a good number of episodes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, yeah, 17 episodes.
Yep.
And it seems like they had another guy, Mark Mosley, come in and do it too.
Yeah. According to Phil Morris, I guess Eddie Murphy also sometimes didn't want to show up on the days to record. So Morris would just fill in when Murphy didn't want to.
Yeah, I guess. Because oh yeah, and they would bring him in like a separate booth too, so that way they could like quickly record things just in case.
Yes.
I mean, also it's kind of funny where like if the other voice actors on the show are working together, where like there's this separate booth for Thurgood, and
Yeah.
they're not really sure who's in the booth. Like the sound is
Yeah.
coming out and it's right, but like,
Well, I'm
is
sure they
that
had a
like who
window.
is it?
Maybe they
I'm
didn't have a
sure.
window. Maybe it was like a mystery. They didn't want anybody to know that Eddie Murphy didn't show up that day.
Oh, in my mind, I would have a mystery booth just to keep it going.
It's like they kind of hear something's off about it. Like it doesn't sound exactly like Eddie Murphy, but it's so close that it's like there's something weird about. Like, are you sick or something? You got a cold? Like,
But yeah, it was like Peaches is a great friggin' show.
it
But
was.
also Eddie Murphy, immensely talented. He should go back to doing stand-up comedy. He's
Everyone
wanted,
says that.
he's
Everybody
wanted,
saying that.
he's wanted to do it for the longest time. But like he also
Honestly,
says this in the Comedians and Cards episode, where his problem is he needs to go work out material, and
yes.
he's too big of a star. Where anywhere that he went,
You know where he's got to go? He's got to go to the fucking mothership.
yeah,
Rogan's club, because that's like exactly what Rogan designed that club for, is for big stars to do small rooms so they could work on shit and basically say whatever they want and like not have any like fear of like, you know, like people like getting pissed off about it or whatever. Like that was the whole point of the mothership, is that it is a comedy club by comedians for comedians. And
right. Like it's like the design is to keep the original vibe of
the
the
comedy
old
store.
comedy store.
Yes, exactly. And I really hope that like Eddie Murphy goes on JRE eventually, because like Rogan will convince him to go to the mothership and do a set. And he convinced Ron White to get back into Ron White had took off. Ron White basically retired when COVID happened. He's like, well, if I
Yeah.
can't play comedy, I'm just not going to play anymore. And like Rogan was like, no, dude, you gotta do comedy again. You're like hilarious. You can't like not do it.
Yeah.
And Ron White was the same way. He's like, I don't know if I can, like, it's been so long, whatever. And Rogan convinced him to do it, and it was amazing. So, and now he's back to doing comedy again. So I really think that's like, like Rogan is like really like the guy to like convince people to go back to comedy, because he like is very much like, you know, really cool about like comedians and like wants them to do well and stuff. And that's why he has the mothership.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're his people. They're his tribe.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's got to do it. I mean, I know now it's like they make you put your phone in pouches in like in every comedy club
Yes.
now.
Yeah, they do that at the mothership too.
Yeah.
which
like we
I
were
kind
at
of agree with. Like it's
oh,
like
I
'cause
do too, because too
you
many
go to
people ruined it with like shitty blogging
yeah, well that and like
and
you go to
like
like
taking every joke out of context that they didn't like just for the
yes.
sake, just because they didn't like the comedian or the joke, so they wanted to destroy somebody.
Well, it's like and not only that, like you go to like any kind of like music show now and people everybody's just filming it with their phones and it's like okay, you're get like okay, yeah, I'll film it a little bit too like the show, but I want to enjoy the show. Like I'll film like something cool that happens or like one song that I really like and then put my phone away and like listen to the music.
Oh, I
You
don't
know,
even bother.
I'm there to like hear the show and like people like want to be like, "Oh no, I want to like record the whole show." And they sit there with their phone like the whole time and it's like, "Come
Yeah,
on, like you're
and
like
there.
missing it. You're like watching it through your screen. You might as well just sit at home on your couch and watch it."
Oh no, I know you're not even there anymore.
Exactly. So
You're stand.
I kind of
It's like
agree.
it's like your avatar is there, but you're present. You're not present.
Yes.
You're like you're watching this thing, and like, why are you gonna like? What's the point? Are you really gonna watch it again? Are you gonna rewatch it a million times, or are you just gonna upload it to social media just to say I was there, which
Yeah.
defeats the purpose entirely?
Right. And again, if like you want to take a couple of quick clips and pictures and stuff, like that's one thing. Like, do by all means, like if like it's good to take pictures because it's like okay, now I can remember where like I was and where I was sitting and blah 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 whatever. But like to be there and sit there on your phone the whole time recording, it's like you're fucking missing the show. Like it's like and it's like I think more venues should do that. Maybe even for like music shows. You
I
know.
think they should.
A lot of
I,
like older musicians will like tell like I know Metallica is like notorious for like telling people like hey like put your phones away, we're here to play for you, like don't like sit there and like listen or watch it through your phone screen, like what's the point?
yeah,
So
yeah, no,
you
I
know
totally agree.
I think if I think Eddie Murphy should go and play a club like the Mothership that does that, where like he doesn't have any fear of like some fucking jackass posting something completely out of context that's a joke on social media to try to get him canceled because people just love fucking outrage culture now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he should. I also kind of feel like, well, I feel like outrage culture, there's a lot of fatigue around it. I'm not saying that it's stopping because it's
Oh
certainly
yeah.
not, but I think there's a lot of fatigue where like people are starting to ignore it.
Yes. Yeah, I think people are just like, just shut the fuck up and let people enjoy things. You know, like
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
like we
everyone's like
had
saturated with it. Like, just like let us enjoy it. Like, we literally went through freaking 2 years of like fucking hell. Like, like everybody wants to enjoy life again. So shut the fuck up. Like, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah,
So
I could not agree more.
yeah,
But all right, I think it's time we wrap this thing up.
yeah,
But the PJs, excellent show.
yeah,
Go back in time, watch this show, laugh as hard as you can. It's a
yeah,
really fun time.
yeah. It was only out for 3 seasons, but go check it out. You know, on YouTube for free. It's on Hulu if you have Hulu. Like, it's a nice little, it's a quaint little show.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody for checking this out and spending time with us. This has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
I remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.